they were speaking about the IDF chief of staff resigning. This is no resignation. This is a forced resignation. This is a sacking. They just don't want to say outright that they're sacking him. Netanyahu had many people resign in his cabinet and in his government in the past 2 years. War cabinet members who were the previous IDF chiefs of staff, Eisenkot and Gantz, several leading figures in the Israeli army, the whole team of the spokesperson, the previous IDF chief of staff, leaders of significant divisions inside of the Israeli army. He forced Ronen Bar to resign. He changed the defense minister also. All of these were forced resignations. In other cases, resignations that came from these people themselves. Those who Netanyahu didn't like, he was forcing them to resign. And now they're talking about the IDF chief of staff. But what is it about the IDF chief of staff? Because don't forget, they brought him as a replacement for Herzi Halevi. Herzi Halevi, at the time, was considered to be a man who is a challenge and posed a challenge for Benjamin Netanyahu. The ministers in Netanyahu's cabinet, especially Ben Gvir and Smotrich, did not like him. He was forced to resign, and then they were selling Zamir as if he is the man for the job, who will finish the job, who will go and occupy all of the Gaza Strip and finally get this over and done with. That clearly wasn't the case. Only weeks after Zamir went into the position of the IDF chief of staff, cracks started to show. Zamir started to have an input. Zamir said recently that he is not in favor of continuing this operation. He constantly highlights the negative side of continuing the operation. We had other reports confirming some of the things that happened recently in relation to Zamir. One of them was this here. For several days, Chief of Staff Zamir has been requesting a discussion in the Political Security Cabinet, which plans for continuing the fighting in Gaza will be presented. In that meeting, he wanted them to clarify exactly how are we going to continue. On the other hand, Prime Minister Netanyahu prevented a discussion in the cabinet and has not allowed the plans to be presented and approved. The defense establishment is attacking the conduct of the political echelon. The security source said and admitted, we don't know what they want. We conveyed the situation to the political echelon, that we had completed Gideon's chariots and its missions. We told the political echelon, this is your time to make an effort. But they're not getting a meeting and they're not even getting a response. What do you want to do exactly? They continued, we understand that we have changed our position at the moment and we are ready to go for a single deal and not in stages, but the problem is that we don't know what's happening in the talks. We used to be partners and know what is happening now. It is being conducted between two, Netanyahu and Dermer, the Prime Minister and Minister Dermer. We received the information about what is happening from the other side through the intelligence channels. We have clarified to the political echelon the consequences of continuing the fighting for the army. This is extremely dangerous. They're not involving the Israeli army in the talks because Benjamin Netanyahu and Dermer, they want to dictate what happens in the talks. Dermer is nothing but a poodle for Benjamin Netanyahu, like what's called the defense minister, Yisrael Katz. Small poodles and yes men for Benjamin Netanyahu who do what they are obeyed to do. Therefore, they're being singled out. They're not being involved in the talks, and that is something that didn't happen previously in Israel. They continued to speak about the dangerous things that would happen to the IDF if they continued down this path. We explained that the continuation of the mission creates bad outcomes for the IDF. There are commanders who haven't conducted training since they finished an officer's course. They don't know how to prepare a training file. There is enormous attrition within the IDF's frontline units. There are soldiers and commanders who only know one type of fighting, and that is Gaza. they're describing a situation that we're constantly speaking about, how this army is exhausted, completely defeated. And they're telling Netanyahu, we can't constantly send them to war like this without any breaks. It reached a level where Netanyahu was sending people with PTSD to go and fight. Some of them killed themselves inside of Gaza, to that level, with a failure, of course, for Benjamin Netanyahu to go and have an alternative and try and make up all of the losses because of the low numbers of people coming for conscription inside of Israel. This is describing exactly how Benjamin Netanyahu is detached from reality. He's treating the whole country in a psychopathic manner, but it's not only him. He has a lot of ministers in his cabinet, and there's a big chunk of the Israeli society who share this view. One of his ministers, Tali Gottlieb, her name is, she shares the same view. In a recent Knesset meeting where some of the families of the prisoners of war were invited, they were talking about the suffering and what they face. She said, you need to shut up. You better shut up. You shouldn't talk, because Hamas are listening. And whatever you say can contribute to Hamas, can be beneficial for Hamas. Imagine she's saying that to the people who Israel constantly speaks about, the hostages, right? Whereas the top aide of Benjamin Netanyahu, one of his top aides in the government, is telling them to shut up. And ministers in his allied parties inside of the Israeli government are saying that we need to consider them missing people, not kidnapped. Some people were suggesting that they should be killed too, because according to them, there was a consideration to kill the Jews in Auschwitz. And we need to take that consideration now, killing the Jews in Gaza, because, they're being starved to death and many of them are going to die. These are talks happening from circles close to Benjamin Netanyahu. That shows you that some of the people in his government are totally careless about the situation. This led to many in the Israeli security and intelligence community, previous heads of the Israeli military intelligence community, and of course all of the conduct of Benjamin Netanyahu in this genocide, led them to release a joint statement in which they said that Israel is on the verge of defeat. There was an article published on one of the Israeli media outlets speaking about this video. Former security officials issue unusual warning. We are on the verge of defeat. Most former senior defense officials have launched a campaign addressing the situation in the war in Gaza and calling for an immediate end to the war. It is leading the state of Israel to the loss of its security and freedom. And according to them, it started off as a justified war, but later on, it stopped becoming justified. And now Israel is on its way for a total destruction. And according to them, there is a consensus amongst the heads of the security and intelligence establishment, an overwhelming majority, to stop this war, because they're seeing what's coming. Many in Israel now are outright saying that there is irreparable damage from all of this genocide. And the people who led the security establishments, and some of them who are still serving now, know the score. These people are not ignorant. And it doesn't matter how much propaganda Israel publishes. At the end of the day, these people know the score. And they know how much harm they're doing for the state of Israel. In the meantime, there have been more talks about another potential war between Israel and Iran. Both sides are preparing themselves. Both sides have spoken about that potential. And Iran today, they published a video in the Iranian media about extremely sensitive information that they received about the pilots who participated in the 12-day war that was between Iran and Israel following the Israeli terrorist aggression against the state of Iran and the intense response that came from Iran. And in this video, they were showing images, videos, and details about all of the pilots, or at least some of the pilots, who participated in the war. This is something exceptionally significant. They're talking about the people, the images of the people, the details of the people, where they live, their names, their relatives. Do they have partners who participate also in the Israeli army or in the Israeli Air Force? And they gathered all of this information and published it in one of their mainstream media outlets. This is proving that Iran is preparing heavily for the next round. More reports about Chinese support and Russian support for Iran to prepare for the next round, although there were already reports of their support happening to Iran during that war. But the Iranians are also sending a message that not only are we preparing, we are aware too of what Israel is doing. We know who participated, and this is an indirect threat too. We know who you are, therefore you're on our hit list, and you should take measures to protect yourselves in the next war, as in when it happens. Because the more time goes by, the more Benjamin Netanyahu talks about more escalation, the more likely that he would have another round with Iran. I was speaking in the previous video about the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu now lost this moment of glory, this fake moment of glory he had with Iran, because Israel did not take advantage of that situation. He did not reach a deal. And the more time went by, the more things started to get revealed. All of a sudden, the Israeli media started to speak about how much Israel suffered during that war. The Israeli army is deliberately releasing videos of Palestinian resistance actions against the Israeli army. More talks about the vulnerability of Israel against Iran and how ineffective it was, actually, because Iran is continuing to develop ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, and it still carries on with its nuclear program. And all of these things are attempts coming from some in the military and some in the Israeli media to apply pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu by highlighting these accomplishments of his enemies, of his biggest enemies. Yet Netanyahu, so far, again, according to the recent reports, and unless, this is all a lie or a tool in the negotiations to try and apply pressure on Hamas, he's saying that he wants to expand this operation and that he has a plan now for a full occupation of the Gaza Strip, regardless of how substantiated it is and next to impossible it is. The United States, Russia, they failed against guerrilla warfare. Israel doesn't have more capability than Russia or the United States. The Palestinian resistance is made up out of something different than even other resistance movements across the world. It's different. But Netanyahu is still stubborn, and he is serious. And he has proven before that when he says something or when he threatens with something, he actually goes ahead with it, regardless of the fact that whether he fails or if he succeeds in this process.